Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Dave. Technically, this was his first State of the Union before a Republican-led House. So with the Republican speaker sitting behind him.
That's what she meant.
That's what I meant, yes.
All right, what'd you think?
Oh, my lands. How much time do we have? Look, I have been up here for a while. I've been to a number of these. All the glitter and circumstance that surrounds a joint session of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. But this is probably the worst speech I've ever heard. And I'm trying to be nice here. He lost his place. He rambled on. He got into back and forths with some of our more unruly members. I can remember back in the day when someone got ejected for criticizing President Obama one night.
Yeah,
that fellow was the only one telling the truth that night, but still, he was ejected from the House. But he invited it with these sort of odd musings about, we're going to move beyond climate change is a real existential threat. We're going to move beyond gas and oil, but we'll need it for about 10 more years. I'm like, come on.
That was bizarre.
It was bizarre. And these projects that these companies involved themselves in, and I know he was pretty critical of some of their economic practices, but they're big risk, high reward businesses, and it takes a while to generate a profit from one of those projects. And if your access to capital all dries up because, we're only going to need you for 10 more years, who's going to fund it? What New York bank's going to fund a new refinery or a new drilling project out in the Permian Basin? They're not. So he weakens their access to capital and then criticizes them because they're not producing enough. And look, I'll just share with you all my drive to the airport on early Monday morning. I paid $3.10 for gas in Texas in February, the first week of February. I mean, that's a bad sign. You know what that means? By Memorial Day, we're going to be paying $4.50 a gallon for gas. And people can't take it because, guess what? You buy 18 eggs at Walmart, like I did Friday night, and it's nearly $10. The prices for things have gone through the roof, just not for just the essentials, no frills here. And I don't think President Biden was talking to the people who are feeling that pain.
He also didn't seem to address two of the big elephants in the room, one being the Chinese spy balloon and the other being the border.
Yeah, correct. Of course, with over half the House being Republicans, there's lots of elephants in the room. But you're right.
Well, yeah.
To talk about,
I didn't think of that, but
to talk about national sovereignty and not mention the fact that this balloon was tracked by our Defense Intelligence Agency from the Aleutian Islands to Hilton Head, South Carolina. I mean, that's a pretty dang big deal. And I don't know. We will get a briefing on it tomorrow, and I wish I had more to tell you today. I only know what I've been reading in the newspapers. They said that they prevented communications with, I guess they have a satellite uplink to the balloon, but I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that to be true, but here's the thing that the Chinese accomplished with that. They were able to show the rest of the world, hey, United States, they're a paper tiger, they're not a world superpower. Look what we just did. And there's plenty of other adversaries of the United States that were also watching that. Anytime something like this happens on the front pages, there's lots of people who are digging into the details and understanding, hey, here is a way that we could fill in the blank.
This could very well have been a trial balloon, so to speak, and a pun intended or not intended, I mean that literally, in preparation for an EMP burst at that high altitude that could wreck the entire electrical grid in the United States for months or even years. And nobody in the government seems to be terribly excited about it, including the commander of NORAD, who says, well, we didn't want to shoot it down because it might come down and hurt people. It should never have gotten to the coastline in the first place.
No, sir. It should have been taken out over the Aleutian Islands, and there's plenty of open water there. The other thing is, yes, the EMP, very real possibility. What about the delivery of some other weapon of mass destruction or even a biologic agent? I mean, there were some real risks with this thing, and again, I shouldn't speculate because I don't have any official knowledge. We do finally get a briefing on it tomorrow, 5 days after the thing was brought down. And I got to believe that on a nice late winter day off the coast of South Carolina, there's probably a lot of boats in the water. There may be just as many people at risk as there were for some of those sparsely populated counties up in Montana. I mean, I don't know what the boat traffic situation was on Saturday, but I suspect it was significant. Look, I'm glad it's down. I'm glad the F-22 Raptors went after it. Brought it out of the sky. I'm glad we've got Navy personnel who are retrieving the contents. I think that's extremely important. So job well done there. But it should never have gotten to that point.
We're talking with North Texas area Congressman Michael Burgess. He was in the House for the State of the Union address last night. What did you make about the debt limit comments, and what do you think needs to be done to avoid an impasse on that?
Well, there's already an impasse, so we can't avoid it, and that's the whole purpose for having a spending limit. And I know there are people who talk about, hey, let's get rid of it. It's just time consuming and troublesome. Look, the reason there's a debt limit is from time to time we need to pause and look at where we've been and where we're going, and this is one of those times. And here's the part of this, and it's different from every other time we faced a debt limit exhaustion during my time here. The last 2 years of the Biden administration, they spent about $10 trillion on stuff. With current expenditures and future obligations and future interest on the national debt. Virtually no Republicans voted for that. That was the American Rescue Plan and the Deficit and the Inflation Reduction Act. That was passed on a party line vote in the House and the Senate under reconciliation rules. They didn't have to get 60 senators. And so, because there was no engagement of Republicans before they passed these things, I'm on committees that should have had jurisdiction over a lot of these decisions, and we just did not. Now, for me, fortunately, I'm also on the Rules Committee, so I got it again up in the Rules Committee, and I complained loudly and longly about the fact that we were not involved in these policies that were coming through. And now the election happens, the shoe's on the other foot, and they say, well, Republicans, you've got to step up because you've already spent the money. No, we didn't. This time, you spent the money. Now, you're going to have to help us figure out how we keep the country right side up as we navigate this now troublesome fiscal situation in which we find ourselves. So, and I will just tell you, David Amy, that particularly aimed at the younger people in your audience, this is important to them because these decisions, you take someone my age and perhaps it's not going to affect me with what I have left on this earth, but for people who are just finishing high school and college, this is critical because the possibility that 80-90% of their paychecks could go to service on the interest on federal debt in the future is a very real one, and people need to be aware of that. That's why these discussions are so important. Now, here's the good news. President Biden said, I'm not negotiating. This is non-negotiable. And then he met with Kevin McCarthy for an hour. I don't know what they talked about, but I'll bet it wasn't baseball score. Right. So that's good that they were talking. And look, on the Republican side, you're probably going to find zero interest in raising taxes. People don't talk about this enough, but the tax bill signed by President Trump, since then, the tax returns to the federal Treasury have been higher than ever before. 20% of GDP is being returned in taxes to the United States federal Treasury. I mean, that's incredible. And the talking point I know from the other side is, oh, you get billionaires and billionaires a big tax break, but nothing for the little guy. No, the tax returns, the tax dollars are charged by the Treasury or collected by the Treasury are at an all-time high. And this is before any of this Inflation Reduction Act taxes that they put on oil companies, before any of that kicks in. This is all a result of the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. So it was, as advertised, a revenue generator for the United States of America. In fact, the smart thing right now would be to say, hands off, looks like we've got our tax system in a pretty good place, and let the GDP grow, which is what it will do. There was a lot of gas in the tank left over after the Trump administration.
Congressman, thank you for your time and your thoughts this morning. It's always a pleasure.